What is up, everybody? Chris here with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop. Today, man, we've got a cool video for you. Brand new product just launched. Well, it's an extension of a product that we're launching. And for years, we've had the full kerf, high quality Klingspor blades. Well, guess what? We are just now launching them in a thin kerf. You want to see more about that? Hold tight, because here we go. First things first, we've got in 5 new blades. We've got a ripping blade in 24 teeth. We've got a combination blade in 50. And if you're a combination fan like I am, this is a fantastic blade. I love the other that we carry in the full kerf. This is just going to make it even better for you underpowered saw operators. We'll get into that in a moment. We have the 60 tooth and the 80 tooth in the miter blade. Both of these can also be used on the table saw. And of course, the Big Mama 12-inch miter. This is a fantastic little blade for those little miter saws, great cuts and good quality. So what we're looking at here is an amazing difference between the full kerf and the thin kerf. You're looking at a few thousandths difference. Now, nominally, the full kerf is going to be 1/8 inch. Nominally, the thin kerf is going to be a 1/16 inch. However, that is nominal. Just like 2x4s, it doesn't quite always work out that way. So always check the manufacturer or the blade itself to see what the exact kerf is going to be. Because if you're trying to make a specific kerf line, that's very important when you're doing that. And so as we get into this, we'll look at the different sizes that we have available. We're going to look at the different tooth configurations, the hook angles, and we may hint a little bit with a little bit of technical as we go along. So let's get started and see what we've got. Let me clean this table off here. First things first, just like in woodworking, we're going to start with a ripping blade. What we've got here is a 24 tooth blade, and ripping blades are traditionally just for ripping. You don't want to use them on crosscuts, laminate, or anything else really other than ripping hard and softwoods. Everything else, meh, stay away from it. So let's take a look at the blade right quick. You can see, just like with our other blades, this is made of a high quality German steel, and the carbide teeth that are applied are also high quality German as well. It is trifoil brazed, and I'm not going to go into all that detail on every blade, but I wanted you to get a look. I mean, let's take a look at that up close. This is a very thick tooth, and if you notice, that is very thick. A lot of thin kerf blades would put a thin chunk of carbide on there, which will, well, it'll leave you minimally not being able to sharpen very much. But with the Klingspor blades, you're going to get multiple sharpenings out of that, which is going to be fantastic. Now, one of the cool things about the 24 tooth, and I'm going to back up just a little bit, is if you draw an imaginary line from the center out to the blade, and I'll sort of do something like this for you, what you'll notice is these teeth have a certain hook angle. I'm going to get a little closer for you. Now, what that hook angle means is how far forward or backward that hook is. Now, for a ripping blade like this, you want a very forward tooth. And this thing's got a, as it says here on the blade, a 20-degree hook angle. This thing is going to plow through material very easily and do a fantastic job at just about any kind of application you need it when you're ripping on those hard or soft woods. And this will cut thicker woods as well. So anytime you got to rip, these little blades work good. So one of the biggest benefits of ripping blades, and I'll cover those in just a moment, is going to be, how much material it removes. But the nice thing about this, and let me grab a tool here that might help you see, these blades happen to have what's called an ATB. Now, ATB stands for alternating tooth bevel. Now, you can see this tooth right here is sort of slanted off to one side. If I rotate down to the next tooth, all right, so you can see that this one is angled off to the other side. So that is an ATB. So every tooth, as you go around this saw blade, every other tooth is going to be angled to the right, and every other alternating tooth is going to be angled to the left. So that's the nice thing about an ATB. And on a ripping blade, this does really well for knocking through the material. So let's take a look at another blade. Set this one off. Let's take a look at this combination blade. Now, combination blades are really popular among the people who are lazy, like the person talking to you now. A lot of times I like to leave one blade on, and the combination blade is the blade you can traditionally do that with. So one of the nice things about the combination is if we look at the tooth set, you'll see a giant gullet, and then you'll see 5 teeth. then you'll see another giant gullet and 5 teeth. So a combination, as the name implies, it is a combination both rip and crosscut. That's the whole idea. And that's the reason why most people like it. Now, what you're going to find is with this particular blade, you are going to have what's called a 4+1. So you're going to have 4 teeth that are alternating tooth, and then you're going to have 1 flat raker. That flat raker is designed to kind of get in there and just really clean out the meat, and these 4 are designed to leave you a fairly clean cut. So when you're doing ripping, this is going to hog out the material while this cleans the edge. When you're doing crosscut, this is going to do the same thing. This is going to leave you crisper corners and edges and minimize the splintering. And then this will come in and do a lot of the hogging out of everything that's left. So really good result with that. Now, one of the things you'll notice is you've got these really tiny gullets along these 4 teeth and this really deep gullet here. This deep gullet is designed to allow for a lot of that heavy removal. So traditionally, that's going to be where the flat top raker tooth is. Whereas these are all going to be, the other ones are all going to be your traditional alternating tooth. So let's take a look at that. Notice on this one, if we were to look, this one happens to have a 15-degree hook. So it's a little more forward on these hook angle. So that's going to help you with your ripping, but it's not quite as heavy as the ripping blade with the 20 degrees. So that's also going to help you with your crosscut as well. So let's take a look at it from the front. Notice here, this is going to be your flat tooth on the end, right near the heavy gullet. If you back up one, notice the alternating tooth there. Back up again, and you've got yet another alternating tooth the other way, and they're going to keep alternating until you get back to this deep gullet here. So that is one of the cool things about a combination blade, is it works fantastic for both ripping and cross-cutting, and makes your life easy if you're a lazy slacker like some of us woodworkers tend to get. Now, let's take a look here at the miter blade. Now I'm going to the 80 tooth instead of the 60. The reason why I'm going with the 80 tooth is if you're looking for a really good thin kerf crosscut blade for your table saw, is this will also work well for that on the table saw as well as the miter. So this is where we're going to start differentiating between those other blades. You're going to start noticing that the hook angle is going to start being less. It's either more straight vertical or in some cases going backwards. And that's what we're going to look at with these crosscut / miter blades moving forward from here on. So let's take a look at this. Looking at this blade, we see that it does have 80 teeth, and of course it is an alternating tooth grind, which we can see there. So that's a very common thing with blades. You're going to have that alternating teeth, leaves a fairly clean cut, and does really well for woods, plywoods, and a variety of other things. And notice this though, this is a 0 hook, meaning this blade, if you ran that straight line right up the middle, this tooth is perfectly straight up and down. So there's no more forward momentum going. That means you're going to get a cleaner cut on a table saw, but on a miter saw, especially if it's a slide miter, it's going to reduce that jerk and that pull that happens when you do those sliding applications. So let's take a look at that tooth there from the front. We've already seen the ATB, but we'll get a quick look at it right fast. Notice that, and even on this blade, you're still dealing with that really thick carbide. So this would be your ATB to one direction. I'm going to skip back, and that's your ATB the other direction. And you've got 80 teeth on this blade that are going to perform that action. So whether this is going on a table saw or miter saw, this will perform exceptionally well. All right, let's get to the other miter. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the 60 tooth miter blade. This is set up for a compound miter, whereas the other was set up for either a traditional miter or on a table saw. You'll notice a significant weight between the two. The 60 is much heavier. You would think the 80 would be, but the 60 is much heavier because of the thicker plate that's applied so that you minimize that vibration. One of the things when you're chopping, you don't typically get too much side-to-side deflection. However, when you bevel that over and start to make that a compound cut, what happens is you get a lot of vibration. Now, on thin kerf, you get a ton of vibration. But what they've done is they've made this plating extra heavy so that when you do that application, you don't get that, which produces a much cleaner cut, which is the whole reason why you go with a nice heavy-duty blade. And this is a specific blade for that compound cutting on a miter saw, but this could potentially be used on a table saw by itself. However, let's take a look at what we've got. With this, we've got an ATB setup. All right, so as I give you a little bit of a close-up, you'll notice that this has a negative 5-degree bore. That means the hook on that is negative 5 degrees. It's going backwards. So whereas before we were going forward, now we're going backwards. This is what makes this blade, when used on a miter saw, especially a slide miter, it'll produce 0 run. Means there'll be very little effort for you to have to make your cuts, and you're not going to be fighting the blade trying to roll forward on you like you do with a positive hook blade. So between that and on the other side, we're still looking at this ATB. Now this is an ATB, but this is got a little bonus cut in here. All right. And we're going to take a look at that real quick. Now, if you look at this blade, let me back up where I can get it in frame for you. All right. What you've got is that is a very unique tooth. Notice that is not beveled to the right or beveled to the left. What that tooth is it's a triple chip, meaning that on both sides of that, you'll see the corners have been knocked off, a sort of chamfered, if you will. And that is going to be part of what makes this blade work so good. Now, if we move on down, notice this tooth is actually alternated to one side, to the right. This tooth alternated to the left. And you'll have a series of those all the way till you get again to yet another triple chip. This was what was going to make this blade stand out amongst the crowd as being a very, very good option for that slide miter and the miter saw in general. So taking a look at these, this is going to be a great option if you're looking for a good blade and a 10-inch saw for both the table saw and the miter station. You will not go wrong with this blade. Lastly, in our thin kerf line, we have our 12-inch 72-tooth miter blade. This is fantastic. Again, just like the previous 10, if you are using this on a slide miter, this will work exceptionally well. So let's take a look at it. So notice on this has a -3 bore. That means it is going in the reverse or backwards, -3 degrees. This is what's going to help it work really well for those miter applications. And this also, you're going to have a 2 ATB plus 1 flat. So this is a unique geometry, which is going to help mill that out, but leave a clean cut. And this flat tooth will give you a very cool result, which will help aid in that negative hook to prevent that from wanting to run, just like the other. So let's look at this from the front. All right, so if we take a closer look at this, what we're going to notice when the camera catches up is you've got a nice ATB going here. So this is going to be your alternating to the left. This is going to be your flat, and then this will be your alternating to the right. Then it will pick up again left, flat, and right. So you're going to have that ATB plus flat along this configuration, which is going to help you with this cutting on a miter saw. So, okay, so that's a quick close-up look at our new thin kerf blades. Now, why the heck would you even want them? Well, there's a few reasons why you should at least consider them for your shop. One, they produce less material removed per cut. So if you're cutting up a bunch of small pieces, that means you might yield more per sheet if you're doing sheet goods. If you're doing large projects, maybe that particular advantage isn't for you. But either way, you're producing almost a 30-second less in thickness per cut, which does generate to other factors. One, you're going to get less resistance as you're making those cuts. Full kerf blade, you are having more resistance as it's making the cut because it's having to plow through that fuller 1/8 thickness of the blade. Whereas a thinner kerf, you got less resistance as it's making those cuts. Also, it's going to cut faster. That doesn't mean you can run your saw faster. That just means it's going to pass through that material faster. So as you are passing your material across, you can actually feed that, in most cases, feed that a little quicker through. So you're going to get less burning, less issues with chip out. That thinner kerf gives you those advantages. And awesome, all of this culminates in the fact that it runs far better on underpowered saws. So if you've got a 2 horsepower or less, basically anything that plugs in 110 volt is considered underpowered. These are going to work far better on there. For years, I ran a contractor saw, and I found that the full kerf blades cut okay, but what really worked well was the thinner kerf blades. All of those previous things I mentioned, the less resistance, the thinner the kerf, the faster cutting, all of that was able to be done better on a underpowered saw. So if you've got a contractor saw, maybe you've been struggling, maybe try one of these thin kerf blades. You might like what you got there. So we're excited about this. I don't know, personally, I have been waiting on these full kerf blades, or excuse me, these thin kerf blades to come in since the full kerfs were launched years ago, 2017 or something like that. So over 5 years, I've been waiting on thin kerf. They're finally here. Can't wait to get my hands on them, get them in my shop, do some testing, and that way I can give you some real world experience reviews, which I hope to do soon. Well, you know what? We appreciate you watching. If you've got any comments about anything we talked about, don't forget to go down there in the description, leave us that comment, and while you're there, click that little like button and subscribe to the channel. Maybe you might get some content that you might be interested in. Well, this is Chris with Klingspor's Woodworking Shop, and we'll see you later.
We really hope you've enjoyed this presentation by Chris Smith on the new Klingspor thin kerf blades. Give us a call at 800-228-0000. Shop us 24 hours a day at woodworkingshop.com.